baby. All right. Hey, folks. This is HC, and I'm very, very happy to welcome the man, the myth, the machine, Michael R Fletcher, to this corner of the interwebs today. Thanks for being here, sir. And please sit there uncomfortably while I talk to the folks for a second. If you've watched the others in this series, sorry for the repetition. Today's video is another in the series of chats that I'm doing for Self-Published Authors Appreciation Week. These are going to be another attempt on my part to focus on the publishing aspect of the title. We all have ideas, probably romanticized, about what goes on in the authoring part of being a self-published author. Odds are that's why we appreciate them the most. But the more I learn about what they have to do on the publishing side of things, and there's nothing romantic about it, the more I appreciate their efforts. Because it's not just uploading a file to Amazon or Smashwords or whatever, and then kicking back and watching the big bucks roll in, right? There's a little bit more to it.
A little bit more.
A little bit more. Okay. Before we get into that, why don't you introduce yourself and tell viewers a little bit about you and your mountain of books?
So according to that name tag underneath there, I am Michael R Fletcher. I am a science fiction, fantasy, and apparently horror author. I have a total of maybe 18 books published. I kind of lose track because I don't pay a lot of attention to that. I have been published since 2013. So my science fiction debut was picked up by a Canadian micro press called Five Rivers. That was titled 88. It's a cyberpunk novel. My fantasy debut was picked up by Harper Voyager. Published worldwide in English, translated into, 8 or 9 different languages so far. And then after that, I kind of dove into self-publishing, and I have 16 or 17 self-published novels, 3 completed trilogies, one of them a trilogy of 4 books, and then a bunch of standalones. And, I'm always writing, always working on new stuff.
Okay. All right. So, I was going to say, you've been at this for a while. When did you start self-publishing?
So self-publishing started 2016.
Okay. Yeah. All righty. And I'm guessing things have changed a bit over the last decade when it comes to self-publishing. If only that it's a bit more accepted, or were perceptions already changing by the time you started?
I think I got in when things were just starting to change. It was there was still definitely a little bit of like grime on the self-published crowd. But I mean, since then, a pile of self-published authors have been picked up by major publishers. So by the same token, well-known traditionally published authors have released self-published books. So it's, people are sort of swinging both ways these days.
Sure. And just more awareness, people have lost some of the grime just in general because, guys like you and other people were actually putting out, good stuff, not the stuff that from my childhood when people said self-published authors, that was a big roll of the eye. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, he's full of himself. We're past that now for the most part. Until my book comes out, and then I'm going to set everything back. So how did you learn your way getting your first book self-published? Were you just relying on what you'd seen other people do? Were there classes?
Okay, so Beyond Redemption, which is the fantasy picked up by Harper Voyager. Rave reviews, did really well critically. Sales-wise, for a major publisher, it was a flop. Didn't sell a ton of copies. And so when I pitched the sequel to them, they passed on it just because sales weren't high enough to warrant giving me more money. And so I was with this book, and I had no idea what to do because I'd never thought about self-publishing. I was vaguely aware of it as a path. But at that point, I'd been sort of trying to get, into the sort of a community of authors, and I'd been talking to a pile of different people from both walks. including Rob Hayes, Ben Galley, Dirk Ashton, who were all self-published back then, like in before I was. And they basically made it clear that this was a path and that it was doable. As I recall, like they helped with advice and stuff along the way. But basically, they said, "Yeah, you got to do this," and then shoved me into the deep end. After that, it was all learning process. Uh, it's not difficult to publish a book. It's difficult to publish one well. So it was a steep learning curve, and I am just insanely stubborn. So I just sort of kept at it until I got it right. Which I mean, I'm still trying to improve. There is no perfection's a myth.
Right. Yeah. So was it a lot of, hey, hey Ben, hey Dirk, what do I do here? Or did you just try something and then waited to see if it blew up?
Yeah, it was a combination of sending questions to people like, how do I do this? And just reading online. Like, I like researching. I'm a nerd. So, give me a problem, I will just sort of hammer away at it until I figure it out. So it was a lot of reading, much like it does Amazon back then, like they do now. They had tons of pages of walking you through, like holding your hand through the process. And it was enough to get me started. It was a little more difficult back then because they didn't do paperbacks and hardcovers like they do now. Mapping out, I can't remember what the company was called that did the sort of handled print for Amazon. They were a bit of a pain in the butt to deal with. And then learning how to do paperback layouts, how to do layouts and print files for books was, another learning curve. Because I couldn't afford to hire people to do any of this for me. So I hired artists for cover art. I hired editors, but that was basically everything. That was all my money. And after that, it's like, okay, I have to do everything else.
Right. Okay. All righty. Before I move on, let me ask you this. So this is not your solo gig. I mean, you've got a day job, right?
Now this is my solo gig. When I first started writing, I was working in a warehouse, had a day job. I did not like my day job. I used to get up at 4:00 in the morning. I'd write until 7:00 in the morning, go to work. I'd write during my break at work. I'd write during lunch at work. I'd write if management wasn't actually staring at me. I'd be working instead of working in the warehouse. Yeah. Every year for my year-end review, they'd pull me into the office and say, "You can't write novels on the company's time. You got to stop." And I'd be like, yeah, you're right. Yeah, I'll stop. And I was like, if you're not going to fire me, that actually means I can do this. Yeah. So I kept doing that. And then 2021, Blackstone Heart, the first book in the Obsidian Path trilogy, kind of just did far better than I ever expected. The sequel did really well. And at that point, it was enough was coming in from writing that we could swing me sort of staying home. And, our daughter was fairly young. And I mean, this was tail end of COVID and all that crap as well. So having somebody at home all the time was kind of really handy. So 2021, summer of 2021 was my last day at the day job.
All right. Okay. So how would you kind of, on a pie chart that probably doesn't exist, how much time do you spend, say, doing the creative part, and then how much of your working time is devoted to the self-publishing, the production, the shipping, the hooking up with editors, all that kind of stuff? How would you divvy that kind of a part up?
Yeah, I don't track my time at all. I'm not organized like that. So this is I'm just
no.
trying to guess it.
I'm not looking for receipts here, man.
Yeah, I'd say probably about a third of my time is writing. a third of my time is goofing off on social media and calling it marketing. And then a third of my time is doing like business stuff, layouts for books, production for audiobooks, like just all of these sort of more, actually making the product side rather than the writing
Yeah.
side.
Okay. Now, do you do like one book at a time from creation to publishing before you move on to something else, or do you have things in various stages of production?
I tend to be in various stages of production, in part because I'm a bit of a squirrel brain. So I like to chase the next shiny idea. So it's a combination of things. Part of the way I work is I will write a book. I can't leap straight into editing it because I need a little distance. I need to stop hating it for one thing. So I'll write a book. I'll set it aside. I'll start writing another book. I figure I might as well write another book while I'm ignoring the first book. So then I finish the first book. The second book. That puts me like 3 or 4 months away from the first book. I've basically forgotten it. So now I can go back with fresh eyes. I edit the first book. That puts me a couple of months away from the second book I wrote. So now I can edit the second book. So typically I end up with 2 books finished like in fairly rapid succession because of the way I've sort of staggered my process. And then to further confuse things, I have an agent. And so with standalones or with the first book in any series, I shop it to publishers now. So that means once I'm happy with the book, it'll go to my agent. If he likes it, he shops it. Basically, I give him a year to sell a book. If publishers haven't picked it up in a year, I self-publish it. So then there's like this year or 2 delay while he's shopping books, which is why like this year, end of 2025, I published Dogged. This year I've got Long Island Memorial, Lord of the Empty Mirror, and Dust of the Dead, all dropping. And they're written, all the art's done, edited, everything's as polished as I can possibly make it. So those are all I had the beginning of this year. I had 4 finished and polished books, just because of the delays with waiting for publishers to say no. And so in the meantime, I'm writing 2 more books.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I meant to have it pulled up and I forgot it, but you tweeted something a couple of days ago about just that you had X amount of books coming out or this year, going back to December or so for Dogged. And then, it's just like, wow, you're working hard. I mean, yeah. Especially if you don't have a day job anymore, slack off on. So right now, how many do you have in production? I mean, you've got these 4 that, you said were polished and ready at the beginning of the year.
Yep.
You got, what? 2?
So, so let's see. Dogged, Long Island Memorial, and Lord of the Empty Mirror. Those have all been published. Dust of the Dead is coming out in August. I'm currently about 35,000 words into a sequel to Dogged. That I'm going to try and sort of time publishing it with the end of the SPFBO because Dogged's a finalist in that competition right now. So that it's nice if I can make that work. Exactly. And then I'm about 30,000 words into a sequel to Dust of the Dead as well. Not quite a sequel, more like another book in the same world.
All right.
So those 2 books on the go, and then in the background, I'm sort of world building this fairly insane science fiction concept I have, which is probably a little too big. I'm not actually sure I can write it.
Sure.
It's maybe a bit much.
Okay. All right. And so I hang on a second. Sorry, I was afraid my dog was about to start barking. Typically, at this point, I was going to ask, how do you keep each moving forward at the same time? But basically, it's squirrel brain. You just keep pushing things along. Okay. So Do you do all self edit? Do you shop it out to some editors for copy or development or anything like that?
Yep. So typically, what I'll do is I'll do about 7 or 8 editing passes myself. Um, I tend to focus on one aspect for each editing pass. So there'll be an editing pass where it's all about continuity, an editing
Hmm.
pass where it's like tightening up language, making sure I sort of correctly set scenes so the reader knows what's going on. I find a lot of writers, they have the scene in their head, but when they actually write the book, too much of the scene stays in their head, and you end up with a lot of like, you know, just conversations are these floating heads, and you're like,
Right.
where are these people? Like, what's
Hmm.
happening? So just making sure I actually got the stuff out of my brain and onto the page. Um, so I'll do 7 or 8 editing passes myself. At that point, I send it out to test readers, beta readers. I always tell
Okay.
them this is my first draft, so be nice, even
Hmm.
though edit it 8 times. Um, I'll look at whatever feedback I get from them, make any changes sort of that I think are needed. Probably do another editing pass or two, and then yeah, I hire 1 or 2 editors, and we'll send it out to get an actual editor to do it because I don't have the attention to detail to like catch like
Hmm.
tiny typos and stuff. My brain sees what it expects to see, so I just
Yeah.
blow right past typos.
Okay. And so how did you find them? Are they the same, or is it new ones for each project or each series, or?
Yeah, so it'll be there's a couple of people so I sort of regularly use, but I'm always looking for new people. I like to change things up and always
Mhm.
look just see how different people work. Mostly it's word of mouth, through social media. If I read a book about a self-published friend and I'm like, damn, this is really tight, this is really clean, I'll ask who edited for them. Um, so yeah, like that.
Okay. I so like um are you thinking like, okay, so Sam put out a book, but the new book is so much crisper, so clearly there's an editor involved that changed. Is that the kind of deal, or just, you're not like, oh, this one is so much better, so clearly you got good help than your last one?
Yeah, no, no, I'm not slagging their writing. It's like these folks
Yeah.
they're good enough writers that whatever book they put out, it's going to be good. But it's more a case of like if I'm catching a lot of typos, if I'm catching missing punctuation, bad grammar, just like the
Hmm.
little stuff that tends to slip past us. If
Right.
I'm catching that, that's bad. But
Yeah.
if I read a book, if I get through like a thick doorstop fantasy novel and I
Hmm.
didn't find a single typo or mistake, I'm
Sure.
like, all right, damn, like that's
Yeah.
a good editor.
Absolutely. Um, okay, and so you talked about layout of books and stuff like that. So is that all you, or did you get for the early books that was all you, and now you farmed it out, or you doing all that?
Yep. For the very first self-published book, I got a bunch of help from a friend who had
Hmm.
done some design work, on his own. He basically walked me through the process and showed me how he was doing it. And then after that, I took over and did it all myself. And man, really, it's now that with the tools, being as good as they are, it's not that difficult.
Okay.
Uh, so the best thing you can do is go through your library, pick out books that you really like the look of, like the
Hmm.
inside, the outside, and just pay attention to that layout, and then sort of
Yeah.
go for that feel, and try to recreate something similar. That's your own.
Sure. Sure. But now cover art, that you you don't do, right?
No, no, I have zero artistic talent. Like I can't. My daughter makes fun of my crayons.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. And how did you? Is it the same kind of process for editors, for graphic, for cover artists? Or are you out there just like flipping through, you know, deviant art and that kind of place, or what are you doing for that?
So it's a blend. The very first artist I hired, John Anthony Di Giovanni. Um, I needed an artist to do The Mirror's Truth, the sequel to Beyond Redemption, and my wife said, "Oh, my brother's wife's nephew is an artist. You should talk to him." And I was like, "Fine."
Yeah.
So I talked to him, and uh, yeah, he did art, and he was doing corporate stuff at the time, and he said he'd sort of take a stab at it. It turned out he's like insanely good. So he did The Mirror's Truth and Ghosts of Tomorrow for me. He is so good now. He is way out of my price range, and he's doing work for Disney.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
So like, that's how good he was. But at the time, like when I met him, he'd never done a book cover before. So he did a pile of book covers. He might still do some. I'm not sure. I think he's making way too much doing film stuff and all that. After that, it was a lot of word of mouth. If I saw a book cover I thought was really cool, I'd find out who the artist was. So Felix Ortiz, I did a bunch of books with him. Amazing artist. Lately, what I've been doing is stalking artists on ArtStation. That's the artist I would mostly go for.
That's the name I was trying to come up with.
Yeah, that's where I found like my last probably half dozen artists. Because I'll get interior art, a couple of interior black and white illustrations done as well. I just like having that in there, and if I can, I will. So yeah, a lot of stalking artists on ArtStation. I will just reach out, email them, and say I'm a deluded hack who writes books, and I need an artist to do cover art. This is the kind of thing I'm looking for. What are your rates? What's a reasonable deadline for you? And I mean, sometimes, people come back and, their rates are just so astronomical that I can't afford them. And sometimes it's like right in that sweet spot. I'm like, awesome.
All right. Okay. So how do you decide where you're going to sell your books? Because you're not exclusive to the South American River.
Yeah. So I kind of am. For me, Amazon, it just makes so much sense. They are still like the single largest bookseller on the planet. 80% of my book sales, which means 80% of my income, is the US. And Amazon in the US is just huge. I mean, who doesn't love looking at a book on, oh, I want that, click, 2 days later it shows up.
Sure.
I have to force myself to leave the house and go to a bricks bookstore because it's just so much easier to have it shipped to my house, and it costs the same. So yeah, I'm my ebooks are through Amazon on KDP, paperbacks, hardcovers through Amazon. All my books, all my self-published stuff is available on Kindle Unlimited because that's, I think maybe 20% of my income is Kindle Unlimited. And so it's nice extra. I'm fine with that. Yeah. And then the only thing that's not Amazon is I do special editions through Kickstarter, and those work well. They're expensive.
Yeah. I know I've seen some of your stuff like on bookshop.org, but not that much. So I was just wondering.
Yeah.
Okay. And so then promotion. Like you said, you spent a lot of time goofing around online, calling it marketing. What do you do beyond that? And is that all trial and error, or is it, again, you've done your research, what works, or is it like, well, let me try this thing and see if it works for me?
Yeah. So I have a couple of times tried advertising, like paid advertising. I have never been able to make it work, so I just gave up. I stopped. So basically all of my sales are word of mouth, which is probably the best advertising, is having your friend go, you should buy this book.
Yeah.
I have no idea what it was. I'm just random and chaotic online. I try and be honest, not sort of a sugarcoat stuff. I try and be available. I usually respond pretty quick if folks message me. That's about it. Try to be open, just talking about the process. Really just trying to have fun.
Yeah. I mean, I've followed you for years before I ever got around to reading you. I was like, oh, that's a fun account to follow. And if I had the time, yeah, I might try some of your stuff. And then, you started talking about this warrior dog, and oh, okay, yeah, okay. So yeah, I mean, yeah, just that constant presence. I mean, even if I didn't know what Michael R Fletcher writing was like, I knew it was out there, and people seemed to like it, and you were doing a lot of engagement. You seemed like a person I should try to read someday. So I mean, it's working for you. I mean, clearly, you're not hiding out in the corner of a warehouse. Okay. And I've asked one other author this, and probably should have asked others, but let me ask you this. What do you think the state of self-publishing in 2026 is? How is the market, not just for you, but for people in general? How is it now? How is it today?
Yeah, it's hard to tell. So I know a lot of young authors, new authors, and it's hard. It is really difficult to break in. I think that's been the case for a long time. I think it's getting worse because there are so many new authors trying to break in, but there's also all the AI slop that's happening, which really just clouds things. So I think it's got to be really hard to get noticed right now. I mean, for me, it's been okay, but then this is like literally a decade later. So it's, new people are still discovering me, but I'm not sort of out there just trying to sell my very first book kind of thing. And, it's when you've got a backlog of, 17, 18 novels, if somebody finds one of them and really likes it and says, oh, does this guy have any more books? It's like, boom, yes, he's got a pile, so that works in your favor. But yeah, I think it's probably it's not an easy path.
Right. Okay. But you would say it's healthy enough, or?
Yeah, I mean, it's
as a whole, not for individuals necessarily, but as a whole.
I'm kind of I'm friends with a pile of authors who have been doing this for as long or longer than I have. And so those are most of the people I'm sort of in regular communication with.
Sure.
And they're all fine. They're all doing well. But when I talk to a lot of new authors, and it's difficult to get noticed. It's difficult to get reviews. People are, celebrating every time they sell a book, which tells me it's hard. It's hard work. But I think it's it's the old saying. It's a marathon, not a sprint.
Yeah.
You got to keep working at it.
Exactly. All right. Well, I guess to close, is there something I should have asked that would enlighten people about self-publishing? Is there anything else you want to say about self-publishing in general?
Probably one of the most important things you can do as a self-published author is be part of the community. Find your genre, find the communities around that genre. Just talk to people, ask questions, offer to help people. Being part of that community will pay off. Right. And it's,
genuinely be part of the community, not just networking to get people to huck your books.
Yeah. Like just generally, just chatting with people. Like when you read someone's book, if you liked it, yell about it on social media. Just that kind of stuff, because that pays off. People notice. If at some point someone's going to pick up your book and hopefully do the same.
Right. Okay. All righty. Well, folks. Well, actually, first, Michael, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
You want to read this guy's stuff. He's got a good back list. He's got a good front list too. Uh, and I can only speak for Dogged. And hear him to talk about working on a sequel just fills me with joy. And I'm sure some of the other stuff is pretty good too. So thanks, and I'll see y'all later. And